A few weeks ago, Apple released macOS 12.3, and then a few days ago, they released a minor update, 12.3.1. With the release of macOS 12.3, you have a number of features. First, you have spatial audio, if you have AirPods that support it, which I don't. Then you have a number of new emojis, 37 of them. Here are a few of them. And then you have a number of updates to Safari and Siri, and a number of bug fixes. But the feature that everyone's been waiting for is universal control. In this video, I'm going to tell you my initial impressions of it and see if it's just a shiny new toy or if it's actually practical. Let's get into it. My name is Patrick, and this is Everyday Tech for everyday people. In this video, we're going to talk about universal control. Apple announced this feature in their developers conference in June of 2021. It was one of those demos that was very simple, yet very powerful. Everyone wanted to try it out. But when they released macOS 12 Monterey, the feature was missing. Eventually, it came out on beta, and with the release of 12.3, we have universal control. Although we'll see in this video, universal control is still in beta. Universal control is enabled by default, but if you want to see the controls, you need to go into your display settings. You can go there by going to the Apple logo at the top left, go to System Preferences, and click on Displays there. Or you can go through Spotlight or another launcher, type in Display, and you can go right to your display settings. And if your keyboard has media keys like my keyboard on my MacBook Air here, you can do Option, Screen Brightness, and it'll take you right there. Check out my video on macOS keyboard shortcuts here or in the description below. Once you're in your display settings, you have a button here called Universal Control. If you click on it, as you can see, Apple considers this feature a beta feature now. Now, to enable universal control, you got to make sure that this first checkbox is checked. Then you have these other features or options: push through the edge of a display, automatically reconnect to a Mac or iPad. Now, I haven't tried this feature without all three of these checked, and I just want to keep it that way because I know it works well that way. Now, once I wake up my iPad Pro from sleep here, it should show up as another display in my settings here, and there it is. Now, this is not an extended display. This is really just the universal control display. Now, if your device doesn't show up automatically, you need to first make sure that every device, including your Mac and iPad or another Mac, are logged into the same Apple ID. And then you can go ahead and click on Add Display here. And here I've already added my iPad Pro here. So everything is ready to go, and I can now control my iPad Pro here with my keyboard and mouse from my Mac Mini. And then the other thing I can do on this settings page here is I can move around where the iPad Pro is actually sitting. So let's say I set it up on the right side of my monitor here, and now I can push through the right edge of my monitor. But I actually have my iPad Pro just below my monitor here, so I'm just going to put it right there. But now I can use my mouse to control my iPad here. And now I'm in a text field here, and I can even use my keyboard to type in things. So that's pretty cool. So let's talk about a few quirks here, especially when using non-Apple peripherals. So I'm connecting from my Mac Mini to my iPad Pro using my KeyChron K7 Keyboard here and my Logitech 720 mouse or Pro mouse here. So here we are in my iPad Pro, and I have my KeyChron K7 keyboard and my Logitech M720 mouse connected to my Mac Mini, but I have it here on my iPad Pro using universal control. So I'm able to click around here just fine using my mouse, but my scroll wheel doesn't work. And then even though I'm able to type in things with my keyboard here, some of my keyboard shortcuts don't work. So I can't do Command Tab to switch between applications. The Command key does register, so if I hold it down, it brings the shortcuts here. And it says I can use Command T to do a new tab, but when I do that here, it doesn't register. So this is a problem with non-Apple peripherals. I've tried this with my MacBook Air using the built-in keyboard and trackpad, and everything worked just fine. And I will say that I do have an old Logitech trackpad, and it does seem to work. So it doesn't seem to register scroll wheels, but trackpads, it seems to register them just fine. And just to show you that there's nothing wrong with the peripherals, I connected the keyboard and mouse both directly to the iPad via Bluetooth here. So now I can use the scroll wheel here, and I can even use my keyboard shortcuts here on my keyboard. So it's definitely something with universal control there. And while my peripherals are still connected to my iPad Pro directly via Bluetooth, this allows me to demonstrate that universal control not only works from Mac to iPad, but you can go from iPad to Mac. So I have my mouse here and I can go up to my Mac here. Now, the thing that doesn't work still is the scroll wheel, but interestingly enough, my keyboard shortcuts do work in this method. So there are a few quirks to be worked out. And of course, this is in beta, but the good thing about this is a lot of people with iPad Pros do have the Magic Keyboard with the trackpad. So it's good to know that you can control your Mac with your iPad peripherals as well. So that's the sharing of your keyboard and mouse between multiple devices. But there's another cool feature with universal control, and that's the sharing of files by dragging and dropping the files from one device to another. Now, I will say that this feature eventually stopped working for me between my Mac Mini and my iPad Pro. It worked perfectly fine between my MacBook Air and my iPad Pro, and actually worked perfectly fine between the two Macs. There's just a little quirk there with universal control in general when you're going from Mac to iPad or iPad to Mac using non-Apple peripherals there. So I hope Apple works this out. So let me demonstrate this on my iPad here, and I have my iPad connected to my MacBook Air via universal control, and we're using the MacBook Air's keyboard and trackpad. But let's say I want to share this little drawing that my daughter did, and we're in the Files app here. She drew this using the Paper app on my iPad here, but I can just go ahead and drag and drop this to my desktop on my MacBook Air, and you have to trust me that now I see the file on my MacBook Air now. This also works in other apps as well. So let's go into our Photos app. Let's say I want to share one of these files on my desktop here. So I drag and drop it to there. You have to trust me that it's now on my desktop, but it can also go the other way now. So let's drag and drop a file from my desktop onto my iPad here. And if we go into imports, there is the file that I just dropped into my iPad. And this also works for Acrobat as well. So let me bring another PDF file from my desktop onto my iPad here, and it just copies it over. So this is one really useful feature with universal control. So universal control is cool, but is it practical? It depends on your computing needs and your setup. You are required to have a Mac and either an iPad or another Mac. In my case, I have both. For me, typically, I don't use my iPad and my Mac at the same time. My iPad is usually used to consume content or while I'm laying on the couch. So one scenario I can see is, let's say I'm using my iPad to watch YouTube TV, a movie, or I'm on a Zoom call on my iPad, and I want to use my laptop at the same time to look up something. Let's say I need to mute myself on the Zoom call, or I need to skip ahead in the movie. I can just slide over my mouse from my laptop onto the iPad, mute myself, or do what I need to do on that iPad, right? Now, I know a lot of people do a lot of more things on their iPad, but for me, typically, I use my iPad with my laptop to extend the display. So, oh, by the way, you can still do that using Sidecar, but you need to right-click on your display in the display settings and choose Extend/Mirror Display. The scenario I see myself using universal control the most is actually between my two Macs. Now, because I'm in a hybrid situation where some days I'm in the office, some days I'm working from home, I'm going back and forth. So when I'm at work or on the go, I'm using my MacBook Air. And then when I'm at home, I'm using my Mac Mini as my home computer. But let's say I'm coming home and I want to still finish some work on my MacBook Air. I could have background music or a chat message going on my Mac Mini, but I only need one set of peripherals, which is my keyboard and trackpad on my MacBook Air. Now, I know this is a very particular kind of situation, but I think some people might be in the same situation as I am. Now, of course, I can drag and drop files between the two computers easily. Of course, there's AirDrop, but there's some little quirks, or it's a little bit of a hassle to use AirDrop on my Mac. You just have to go into the Finder, go into the right folder. Anyway, it's a lot easier to drag and drop files between the two devices. So what are my overall thoughts on universal control? I would say it's a feature that I won't use that often, but when I do, I'm glad I have it. Now, because it's going over wirelessly, there's a little bit of a lag on the guest computer. So I noticed this going both ways. Well, from going from my iPad to my Mac, there was a little bit of a stutter or not as smooth as far as the mouse is concerned. And I found the same thing. It was a little bit better going from Mac to iPad. So this is not a replacement feature, but more of a convenience feature. I think most people using an iPad with a Mac are like me. They're using the iPad as an extended display using Sidecar. Rarely do I have to share my keyboard and mouse with both devices. So what do you think? Is universal control a shiny new toy, or is it pretty practical? Can you see yourself using it in your setup? If you like what you see here, give this video a like and consider subscribing. Until the next one, see ya.